In the realm of health and wellness, few concepts carry as much intuitive appeal as the idea that fasting is a straightforward path to lower blood sugar. Picture this. You decide to forego that habitual breakfast, perhaps inspired by tales of intermittent fasting's metabolic miracles, or you're extending the serene hours between dinner and the next day's lunch. The reasoning seems airtight. Without the influx of carbohydrates from food, glucose levels in your bloodstream should inevitably recede, like a tide pulling back from shore. No new sugars entering the system means depletion, right? It's a narrative that aligns with our modern meal-centric worldview, where energy is often equated directly with what's on the fork or spoon. Yet, as countless individuals armed with continuous glucose monitors or simple finger prick tests have discovered to their bewilderment, the reality unfolds in a far more intriguing manner. Rather than dipping gracefully, blood glucose levels can climb. Sometimes modestly, other times with stubborn insistence that defies expectation. This ascent feels almost conspiratorial, as if your own physiology is undermining your best intentions. Is it a sign of impending diabetes? A betrayal by a faulty meter? Or perhaps proof that fasting isn't for you? The short answer, and one we'll unpack at length here, is none of the above. This paradoxical rise is not a bug in your biological software. It's a feature, a brilliantly engineered response rooted in the deep-seated imperatives of survival. Your body isn't rebelling. It's recalibrating with the precision of a master conductor, ensuring that in the face of temporary nutritional silence, the symphony of life plays on uninterrupted. To truly appreciate this elegant contrivance, we must step away from the superficial logic of calories in and out and immerse ourselves in the intricate web of hormonal conductors and metabolic artisans that govern glucose dynamics. At the heart of this narrative lies insulin, the anabolic architect that ferries glucose into cells for storage and utilization. But fasting introduces a cast of counter-regulatory protagonists, glucagon, cortisol, and adrenaline, each with their own instrumental roles. And presiding over it all is the liver, that unassuming yet extraordinarily versatile organ, functioning as both a reservoir and a refinery, capable of conjuring glucose ex nihilo when the larder runs low. When you embark on a fast, your body doesn't merely pause. It pivots, transitioning from an era of abundance, even if that abundance is just your last meal, to one of prudent conservation and internal resource mobilization. This shift is what gives rise to the observed glucose elevation, a phenomenon that's as fascinating as it is functional. Let's trace the arc of this metabolic odyssey step by step, beginning with the immediate aftermath of your final caloric intake. In those initial hours of fasting, say, the first 12 to 16, depending on the heft of your preceding meal, your body draws upon its most accessible energy depot, glycogen. This polysaccharide, essentially a coiled chain of glucose molecules, is stockpiled primarily in the liver for systemic distribution and skeletal muscles for local use. Glycogen serves as nature's fast-draw energy pack, breaking down via glycogenolysis into free glucose that swiftly replenishes the bloodstream. It's a seamless process mediated by enzymes like glycogen phosphorylase, triggered subtly by the waning of post-meal insulin. This phase keeps blood sugar remarkably stable, often hovering in the familiar 70 to 100 mg/dl range for healthy individuals, allowing you to go about your morning routine without a hint of hypoglycemia's fog. However, glycogen is a finite bounty. The liver stores, which might hold 100 to 120 grams in a well-fed adult, equivalent to about 400 to 500 calories of glucose potential, typically exhaust themselves within 12 to 24 hours of fasting onset. Muscular glycogen, more copious at 300 to 400 grams but less accessible for blood sugar maintenance, follows suit if you're sedentary. Factors like your basal metabolic rate, physical activity, a brisk walk accelerates depletion, and even genetic predispositions to glycogen storage efficiency influence this timeline. Once these reserves teeter on empty, the body faces a crossroads. Allow glucose to plummet, risking the shutdown of glucose-dependent powerhouses like the central nervous system, or innovate a supply chain from alternative materials. The latter prevails, of course, ushering in the era of gluconeogenesis, the de novo synthesis of glucose from non-carbohydrate precursors. Gluconeogenesis is nothing short of metabolic sorcery, a multi-step biochemical ballet performed chiefly in the liver, with minor contributions from the kidneys during extended fasts. The raw materials are diverse and resourceful. Amino acids, such as alanine and glutamine, harvested through the breakdown of muscle proteins via proteolysis. Lactate recycled from anaerobic glycolysis in exercising tissues, the Cori cycle in action, and glycerol backbone liberated from triglyceride hydrolysis in adipose tissue. These substrates converge in the liver cytosol and mitochondria, undergoing a series of enzymatic transformations. Think phosphoenol pyruvate carboxykinase, fructose, 1,6-bisphosphatase, and glucose 6-phosphatase as the key choreographers to yield free glucose. This is a mere patchwork. It's scalable production, ramping up to supply 100 to 150 grams of glucose per day in prolonged fasting, enough to fuel the brain's baseline 120-gram daily demand while sparing other tissues. What elevates gluconeogenesis from a chemical curiosity to a survival imperative is its orchestration by the endocrine system. Fasting precipitates a profound hormonal reconfiguration. Insulin, that postprandial sentinel, plummets as blood glucose stabilizes post-meal, removing its inhibitory brake on glucose production. In tandem, the pancreas unleashes glucagon, insulin's eternal twin and functional foil, which binds to hepatic receptors and activate adenylate cyclase, igniting a cascade of cyclic AMP that flips the gluconeogenic switch. But glucagon doesn't operate in isolation. Enter cortisol, the glucocorticoid powerhouse from the adrenal cortex, which not only boosts gluconeogenic enzyme expression, but also heightens substrate availability by promoting lipolysis, fat breakdown for glycerol, and proteolysis, muscle amino acid release. Adrenaline, surging from the same adrenals in response to sympathetic nervous system activation, adds urgency. It accelerates glycogenolysis in any residual stores and further mobilizes fatty acids, creating a lipid lifeline that allows glucose sparing for obligate users like erythrocytes and neurons. This hormonal trio, glucagon for direct liver command, cortisol for substrate amplification, adrenaline for rapid mobilization, forms a counter-regulatory axis, a feedback loop fine-tuned by millennia of selective pressure. In our evolutionary past, when Homo sapiens navigated erratic feasts amid lean famines, this system was a difference between vigilance on the savanna and vulnerability to collapse. The modest glucose rise you might measure, perhaps 10 to 20 mg/dl above baseline, reflects the liver's dutiful discharge of its payload, not an unchecked flood. It's homeostasis in motion, not the pursuit of minimalism, but the art of adequacy, keeping plasma glucose in the 80 to 110 mg/dl sweet spot, where cognition thrives and cells hum without excess. Delving deeper into cortisol's spotlight role reveals why it's both praised and maligned in fasting lore. Dubbed the stress hormone for its role in fight or flight in chronic anxiety circuits, cortisol earns a bad rap in excess. Think elevated risks for abdominal fat, hypertension, and immune suppression. Yet, in the acute context of fasting, it's a virtuoso performer, peaking rhythmically, thanks to the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, to synchronize with circadian needs. As insulin wanes around the 4 to 6 hour mark, cortisol ascends, peaking in the early morning, dawn phenomenon, to prime you for awakening. It doesn't just prod the liver, it reprograms gene transcription via glucocorticoid receptors, upregulating PPCK and other gluconeogenic players while downregulating glycolytic ones. Synergistically, it potentiates glucagon's effects. Imagine glucagon as the foreman, cortisol as the architect expanding the factory floor. Adrenaline, with its shorter half-life, provides staccato bursts, especially during perceived stressors like a sudden workout mid-fast, ensuring no lag in energy delivery. This interplay extends beyond glucose to a broader energy repartitioning. Free fatty acids, FFAs, from lipolysis, cortisol, and adrenaline's handiwork, become preferred fuel for skeletal muscle and heart via beta oxidation yielding ADP without glucose's involvement. Ketone bodies, forged from excess FFAs in the liver, emerge as a secondary brain fuel after 2 to 3 days, further conserving carbs. The result? A body in elegant thrift mode, where the glucose uptick is but a visible ripple on a sea of adaptive waves. Variations abound. In novices to fasting, the rise might feel pronounced due to unaccustomed hormonal swings. in seasoned practitioners, blunted by improved insulin sensitivity. Stress, sleep debt, or caffeine can amplify cortisol, nudging glucose higher, while exercise might blunt it by enhancing peripheral uptake. When this elevation registers on your monitor, it's easy to spiral into doubt. Does it mean fasting's benefits are illusory? Far from it. This is evolution's endorsement, a mechanism sculpted for endurance in an unforgiving world. Ancestral humans didn't graze continuously. They endured multi-day hunts, seasonal scarcities, migratory treks. A hypoglycemic crash would have been fatal, impaired judgment leading to predation or missteps. Instead, the counter-regulatory surge ensured steady fuel, with gluconeogenesis as a sustainable backup. Today, in our air-conditioned abundance, it manifests as a problem, only viewed through a lens of perpetual feeding. In truth, it's proof of resilience. Insulin's retreat cues the cavalry. The liver alchemizes necessity from sparsity, and blood sugar holds a line. Even in metabolic discord, like type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, the script persists, albeit with distortions. Insulin resistance mutes cellular glucose uptake, so hepatic output, uninhibited by weak insulin signals, overshoots, yielding fasting glucoses in the 120-plus mg/dl territory. Here, the dawn phenomenon intensifies, cortisol's morning crescendo unmet by insulin's counter. Yet, the intent remains protective. It's the chronic insulin hypersecretion from prior overfeeding that sets the stage for dysregulation. Fasting, paradoxically, can recalibrate this by restoring insulin sensitivity over time, though initial rises are par for course. Consider the dawn effect more closely. That pre-breakfast spike, often 10 to 50 mg/dl above midnight lows, isn't fasting's fault, but its flourish. As night deepens, growth hormone and cortisol collaborate to stockpile glucose for the metabolic ramp-up of dawn. Cortisol peaking around 4 to 8 a.m., glucagon tagging along. It's anticipatory intelligence, preparing for cortisol's natural zenith and the physicality of rising. In healthy folks, insulin tempers it swiftly upon eating. In the resistant, it lingers, a reminder to address root causes like visceral fat or sedentary habits. Ultimately, this glucose narrative reframes fasting not as a punitive denial, but a dialogue with your deepest biology. The rise isn't rebellion. It's revelation of a body that doesn't just endure absence but exploits it for renewal. It underscores that blood sugar isn't a solo act tied to the fridge, but a chorus of internal symphonies, adapting ceaselessly to keep you not just alive, but alert, agile, and alive to possibility. Embrace the climb as a badge of your physiology's prowess, and let it propel you toward deeper attunement with the rhythms that have sustained our species since the dawn of hunger itself. In this light, fasting becomes less a regimen and more a reclamation of ancestral wisdom, hormonal poise, and the quiet power of physiological poetry.